Hey, welcome to the Testify podcast. Philip will be with us next week, but today we have a special guest, my good friend, Mike Ray.
What's up, guys?
Mike, people ask me a lot of times who I look up to who's a mentor, and my dad is definitely one of those, but Mike Ray is on that list.
That's a little pressure.
That's a lot of pressure for you.
Yeah.
You have a lot to live up to this podcast.
I'm going to work on it. I'll try.
How you been, man?
I've been really, really good. It's been a little while since we've talked. We usually go get coffee every now and then. We're due.
This is our coffee, but we did cheat. We put water in here.
Well, that's all right.
I don't know.
We might fall asleep.
We're going to need some water. Hopefully nobody falls asleep.
Yeah.
So, Mike, you are the reason that we're doing this podcast with you because you did not know Jesus, and then you knew Jesus, and at the same time, you didn't come from a wealthy family, but today I asked you a minute ago if I could say this. You're a millionaire. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think that it is inspirational to talk about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The correlation between blessing and God.
Yeah.
So, tell us like what your childhood was like and stuff like that, and then we'll just progress.
We didn't have really anything. I mean, our house was a roof over our head, but honestly, it wasn't much more than that. I mean, we lived in, I don't know how many square feet it was, but it was a really small 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, and sometimes our water heater didn't work, and my mom had to boil water and throw it in the cold water in the tub to make it warm enough to get in, and we didn't have anything. My dad was a construction worker. My mom did like clerical stuff, and then she wound up on disability after a while. And yeah, so we didn't grow up with any kind of money. I didn't go to school. I mean, I graduated high school, but I didn't go to college. There was no money in the budget for anything like that. So as soon as I got out of school, I went right into construction with my dad. 1996 is when I graduated. So in 96, I started at a construction job making $10 an hour, just moving into the world, which was a big raise from $6 an hour at the grocery store. So, I mean, I did feel pretty good about it.
You worked for our governor, didn't you?
Bill Lee. Yep. I worked for Lee Company for about 7 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was good.
You learned a lot there.
I learned the trade of plumbing, which really kind of set a lot of things in motion really for my life. I mean, I think now we know more than we knew back then. I used to tell my wife all the time, one day you're going to see it where the trades are like, we're hungry for them, like we need them, and they're going to get more expensive, and they're going to make more money, and their jobs are going to get better, and all that stuff. Because back then it was like that's where you started out, like you were the grunt digging the ditch, But as time progresses, everybody wants to do media stuff or communication, or like they don't want to weld and climb ladders and get in the cold and be in the hot. And
everybody wants clean hands.
They do, yeah, which I don't blame them. I want clean hands too.
Clean, soft, manicured nails.
Supple hands and all that stuff. But
I don't know what it's like not to have dirt under my fingernails.
I haven't had dirt under my fingernails in a while, so I know what it's like.
You're getting soft, bro.
You see these?
That's pretty.
They look pretty good, don't they?
Looks like you've been to a manicured place.
But I was a plumber for 16 years. So there was 16 years of those dirt under the fingernails. Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of my background as a kid, and then kind of getting into a trade and sort of becoming a grown up.
What? And did y'all go to church when you were growing up?
We didn't go to church. I mean, there was I can vaguely remember a couple of times where I think me and my mom went with my grandmother maybe. I say maybe because I only have like a couple snapshots in my head of like being at a church, and it was a small town, I don't know. I feel like there was 30 or 40 people maybe in the room or something like that. But I didn't know what was going on or what they were talking about. We didn't talk about it outside of that. Like we didn't. I do remember my mom made me do the prayer when I was little. Now lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take.
Wow.
So I still remember that almost like I do my ABCs, from being really small. But really that's it. I mean, I used to tell a friend of mine, he said something about, do you know who Jesus is? And I said, I think he's like that naked guy that's always like on a cross. People have him on their wall a lot. I don't know. died for our sins. I don't know anything about that. And the blood of the Lamb, I don't know. But that's what I know about him. I don't, So no, I mean, I knew very, very little about God. I do feel like though I wasn't ever like, I don't think I was like anti. I always felt like we got here somewhere, somehow. I think there is some kind of higher power. There are some things that seem to be a little too ironic, for it just to be like explosion and here we are, that kind of thing. But I wasn't introduced to God until my wife got me going to church because my mom was going to church, and this was in 2004. So graduated in 96, I was 18, and so started going to church in 2004. And a lot of things in my life, I was just thinking about this earlier today. I was thinking about coming here and hanging out with you, and I was like, man, a lot of things really shifted in 04, 05. Everything, like my career, we had a kid, and I become a Christian like 04, 05. Like, now that I look back on it, there's probably some friends that were like, man, Mike's like flipped his lid, like everything's all different about Mike. But yeah, that's kind of how it went.
First of all, you have an amazing wife. Tanya is like one of a kind.
Yes.
And then y'all produced a son.
Yeah.
That like when he talks, everybody gets lit up.
Yeah.
He's a good dude.
Yeah.
I saw him yesterday.
Yeah.
And he makes you feel like you're special, important. He's a good guy.
He's got a lot of energy. He's bright and happy and thankful, and yeah, he's definitely learned. That like that kind of attitude gets you farther in life than the Eeyore syndrome, So yeah, he does good.
So in 2004, you already started like getting involved in real estate, that sort of thing?
I was a plumber, and when I was a plumber, there was one particular guy that I did some plumbing for, and I remember being at a rental house of his. He had 8 rental houses, and his name is Arthur. And so whenever I was working on this guy's sink, he was standing in the kitchen with me while I was working on the kitchen sink, and I was just drilling him. I was asking him all the questions, but he was really cool. I mean, he was answering everything. How do you find tenants? How do you find houses? How do you get a mortgage? What's a lease look like? How much is your mortgage? How much is the rent payment? What happens when they tear your house up? And he was just answering everything under the sun. I got done with that sink, and I went home, and like by the time I got home, like I'm telling my wife about all the stuff that this guy Arthur told me, and I'm just like buzzing, like the whole idea. And this is what really got me, because I barely graduated high school, but I was like, so his mortgage is $500, but he rents it for $900, and I can do that math.
Yeah,
and that means I get to keep some money, and I don't necessarily have to go to a 9 to 5 for that. So that's kind of was the spark to it. And then I didn't know anything about appreciation, but I knew that my parents had bought a house in Hendersonville whenever I was a kid, and they paid $54,000 for it. Dude. And I remember that they got refinanced a couple years ago, and I remember a couple years later, and my dad told me that it appraised for like 70 or something like that. And I was like, so you buy a house for 55, and like 2 or 3 years later, it's worth 70. I mean, that's pretty cool. Like I didn't know the word equity, but that means you got an extra $15,000 that your house is worth. So a couple of those things I started putting together, and it made me want to pursue real estate. And I called a realtor, and I drug this poor lady all over town. Me and my wife, after work, we'd call her up. Hey, Sylvia, would you go take us to look at these houses? I got a list of houses. And she would drive us around in the worst parts of town, by the way, at night. And we're going and looking at vacant houses, in rough parts of town at night that nobody wanted, and just banged up houses, busted windows, no air conditioning, power wasn't on, all this kind of stuff. And that poor lady. But she ended up finding us a house, and we flipped the house, and we made some money. And, sometimes figuring something out a little bit and having some success with something can be almost addictive, where you do something and it could bite you too, but like sometimes you win and you're like, oh man, let me find another one of those. And that's kind of what happened to us. We did that first house, and this is like in 05 probably, when we flipped this house in East Nashville, and we made $20,000 on it. And I was like, holy cow, like $20,000. Like that's a year's worth of income back then. $20,000. I mean, that was a big deal. So like by the time we're closing on that house, I'm trying to figure out how to get another one.
Yeah. So 04 you come to church, 05 you start flipping.
Yeah.
When did your relationship with Jesus like really shift?
So like in '05, when I started going to church, they asked me to be in a play, and it was like your Easter
Let me
play.
guess, you were Jesus.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. I wasn't at first.
No, look at you.
I was one of the disciples, and they were like, "Do you think maybe you could?" I had short hair, and they were like, "Maybe just let your hair grow out, and maybe you let your facial hair grow out and stuff like that." So we had like, I don't know, 3 months, and so I was kind of shaggy by the time the thing. I didn't have any lines or anything. I was so nervous, like just to get in front of people at all was flipping me out. And then we got done with the play, and then the director said, "Hey, next year, a year from now, would you consider being Jesus?" And I was like, holy cow. But yeah, so I did it. And that's really something that like really kind of, I guess, propelled me. Like I was already going to church and I was meeting a lot of people, and that's a big thing to me. Like I love you so much, and I have the same feeling for a lot. I don't know, this like the dudes, the hugs from a guy, and like the just being able to talk about our stuff and like share our experiences, and just like the friendship and the camaraderie, and so all that stuff was pushing me too. But whenever I was going to be Jesus in the Easter play, it was like, well, here's your script, and this script was full of scripture. I mean, all the red letter stuff, that you see in the Bible. And so I started reading this stuff, and like it was like I was forced to read the Bible. You thought you wasn't going to read your Bible, well, here it is, So I got it in the script, and so I remember sitting in the bed at night at like 9 or 10 o'clock at night just by myself, and I'm just going through the script like crazy, trying to like memorize every single line and every single verse, and then putting emphasis on it, and then that makes me think about like what was Jesus thinking about when he was doing this, or like what made him feel the way he felt, or like compelled him to say what he said to this lady or whatever. And so I think that really like locked me in, I guess, so to speak. That and like the friendships and the people, like I never knew that like the people inside of the church building could be as important to me as anybody else in my life, like just as important to me as family members or anything. I mean, like they're not blood related people, but people I feel like I could really lean on if I need to. And I have leaned on them through the years a bunch of times, and they've been there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that experience church hurt.
Yeah.
But there's also this awesome, wonderful side to it. And
Yeah.
I think that's awesome that you found that community.
Yeah.
And that's Three Oaks, right?
Yeah, Three Oaks.
Pastor Clay, shout out Pastor Clay. He's an amazing man.
Yeah,
amazing
he sure
pastor.
Is. Yep. Yep,
he's my youth
absolutely.
pastor growing up.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Right.
But so I met you somewhere around 2008 or 9.
Probably that sounds about right. Yeah.
At that time, you had started inspiring me because you started this journey. But you started buying trailer parks or getting into trailers.
Yeah.
And then you had like people give you a hard time about that.
Yeah. So I bought our very first transaction was. So I was telling you about the house that we flipped, and we did that at the very beginning. But the very first transaction was probably just before that, or right around the same time, actually. Anyways, we answered an ad in the paper. You remember the paper?
What is that?
The Tennessean. And I remember opening up the Tennessean one day, and I wasn't going to make the phone call. Tanya, my wife, made me call the guy, but it said that there were 2 duplexes and 3 or 4 houses, all as a package. And they wanted $20,000 down, and they were going to do the financing. Well, we didn't have $20,000, but we had a small piece of land in Castilian Springs that we had talked about building on. It was 3 acres with a pond. It was like that's where we're going to be. Like our life, we were going to be there.
Wow.
So ironically enough, now we bought it, and like 6 months later, somebody brought in a couple of mobile homes across the street, and I was like, well, we're not building there now. There's mobile homes across the street, and then I bought mobile home parks later on after that.
So you were judgmental. And
I was, yeah, and I called the city, and I was like, hey, there's a bunch of mobile homes they're bringing in across the street, and she said, well, and I said, we have restrictions. I can't build a mobile home on my property. She said, oh, you're on the very edge of that restricted border. So right across the street, they can do whatever they want to. Well, we ended up but exchanging that lot for the down payment on all these houses, and they were the worst houses in the worst neighborhoods. I mean, it was. Sometimes we do things and we don't have any business doing that. We don't know what we're doing. We just jump right in there and we'll see how it goes, I guess. Rather ask for forgiveness than permission kind of thing, I guess. So, but we ended up trading this little piece of land, and we bought these houses. They were rough houses, but the guy that I bought him from, his name was Lee. And one night, me and him were together, and we were driving down the road, and he pointed over at this mobile home park, and he said, hey, so I got some issues in this mobile home park, and the manager and me, we don't get along. I can't stand her. She can't stand me. I don't want anything to do with that place. I want to move all my stuff over to this side. Anyways, I want to sell you those 3 homes for $10,000. And I said, I don't have $10,000. He said, what have you got? And I said, I have a 1994 Camaro Z28. And he said, I'll take it. So the next day, literally the next day, I brought a title for a Camaro, and I drove it there, and I had my wife pick me up later that day, and he gave me 3 titles to 3 single-wide trailers and a trailer park.
Nice.
And they were not pretty. They were not nearly as pretty as the car was. The car was pretty, and it was fast. The trailers were not pretty or fast. They were real ugly. But we fixed up those homes, and I guess the moral of that is I went from having something that was just taking all my money. I was spending money. I was, every little dime that I got, I was like buying the next part. We did some drag racing and some shows and stuff. It was fun for a season, but then I realized that I'm spending all my money, and it's time to grow up. So I traded that for something that made money, and I still very well remember these homes that we had. We sold them for $1,500 down and $210.67 a month. So now I got 3 homes at $210.67 a piece coming in, so $650 a month that I'm bringing in instead of giving away $500 a month. And
see, people don't think like that.
Yeah,
normal people don't think like this. Whenever you talk, like my heart like lights up. I mean, I probably get what you got when you talk to Arthur.
Yeah.
And I hope people can like see this. Like you give away something you love for these ugly trailers, but that's like the mentality. Well, how did that switch in you? Like,
well, I think just before that, I was starting to just go, man, I don't know. There's other things in life that I want. And I'll tell you a big thing. It's like, I told you about my childhood. We didn't have anything. Well, I didn't want to continue on that trail, and I didn't want my son to continue down that trail or my wife. And so like I specifically remember one time whenever I was a kid, and I have an uncle who got a bass boat. And I remember the whole family lit up about this bass boat. It was like the biggest, it was wild. It was like, he got a bass boat, he's going to go fishing, maybe you can go take a ride on it. I mean, it was a big deal that he could make a payment on a bass boat. And I remember just like my whole life as a kid, it was like, can we make it the mortgage payment, or what kind of a used car can we buy? What kind of cheapest payments can we have on things so we can just make ends meet? So whenever I was 27, I think, when we kind of started looking into real estate, and that was my goal going in. I don't want to bang my body up for my whole life and burn myself and cut myself and be in the cold and be in the heat for peanuts, kind of, for just enough money to scrape by and maybe have like the white picket fence life, that I could possibly hope for. I just wanted more than that. And so that's really sort of what pushed the thoughts of like, I think maybe it's time to let go of this car and let go of some of the spending and, just silly stuff that we've been doing, and start thinking a little bit about the future and what we want to do and how we want to grow and that kind of thing,
That's incredible, man.
Yeah.
It's just amazing when that switch flips in people's minds.
Yep.
And then it's not just a mindset, like your heart and everything's in it, your soul.
Yeah. And then once that switch flips, like you said, then you're going, well, how else can I get some more of that? So like we got 3 of these homes at $210.67, and I had this guy that said to me one time, he had a bunch of rental houses. And so he said, you got 3 of them, huh? And I said, yeah. He said, well, what's wrong with having about 40? And I was like, yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. He said, what's wrong with having 140? And I was like, yeah, it's starting to sound good to me. So yeah, so that's kind of how it was born, and that's kind of how we started running with it. Yeah, what's wrong with having some more? And let's get some more. How can we get some more,
So there's a story you told me a while back.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this mix between faith and business.
Yeah.
Whenever you told it back then, I just teared up because and I'm probably about to do it again. So I'm not going to let myself do that.
Do we have a towel
I'm
or
tough.
something somewhere?
I'm too tough.
We have a towel?
I need a towel.
We need a tissue.
But will you tell that story of when you went alone and just talk to God?
Yeah, so the story you're talking about is, we get into desperate spots sometimes, and that'll really break you down, So like I think at the time we had about 7 or 8 rental homes, and I had left my job as a plumber. And so I think you've probably been in this position, I know you have, where like you're trying to transition from one major a career path to another. And then like that transition can be difficult, like putting the pieces together and like, am I going to make enough money and all this stuff? So we had a handful of houses, and I still got 1 foot in the plumbing, and I've got 1 foot in real estate. And so we had 7 or 8 houses, and I remember 3 houses went vacant in 1 week. And so that's a big deal, man. I mean, like out of 7 or 8 houses, 3 houses went vacant. I'm going, I don't know if I can make the mortgage payments on all of the houses this month, because we got 3 houses that went vacant, and they probably all need some work too. So I remember just freaking out, being super worried about it. And now at the time I had this office space. My office space was a 10 by 10 room with no windows on Dickerson Road when nobody wanted to be on Dickerson Road. Ain't what it is. It ain't what it was back then, So I had this little office room. Now, when you're in a 10 by 10 block office room with no windows and you turn the lights off, it gets real dark. And so I just thought that day, I was like, man, I'm just gonna pray. And I was still a very new Christian, probably a year or 2, something like that, into going to church. And so I just shut my lights off and stumbled my way in the dark over to my office desk and sat down on the floor and put my elbows, in my office chair, which is a really good position, by the way. If you're thinking about a way to pray, that's a pretty comfortable position. But I just remember praying and thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do, but like praying, just God, bring me some tenants. Like surely there's some people that want to rent these homes. I've got to do something. I'll have a mortgage payment due in 2 or 3 more weeks, and I don't know how I'm going to make these ends meet. And I got a kid, that just gotten into the world, and I got a wife, and I got bills to pay, and my own mortgage, and all these things. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But here's the wild part about it, and it really, like another one of those switches that flipped was. I prayed and I was crying and weeping and all this stuff, man. And I went over and turned the lights on and my phone rang. You ever been like real emotional and you got to answer the phone?
Oh, it's the worst.
And you're like, hello, and you gotta compose yourself all of a sudden. And so I answered the phone that way, and it was a lady that wanted to rent one of the houses. And I was like, yeah, I can meet you over there, and I can show you the house and all that. So I ran over there, like, drop what I was doing. I drive over to the house. It's just 10 minutes away. And I drive over to the house. She likes it. She wants to rent it as is. She wants it right now. And I was like, oh, God, thank you so much. Like, I got some deposit money. I got the first and last month's rent. I mean, like, I actually have a little bit of cash now. I think I'm going to be okay. But as thankful as I was, and like just that one thing of that one house getting rented, by the end of that week, all 3 of those vacant houses were rented. And I was like, I mean, God, like I wasn't, like I still had the tears on my face when I got the first phone call for the first tenant that wanted to rent the home. It's like he wasted no time answering exactly what I needed. And, and then by the end of the week, we had all 3 homes rented. And so then after that, I remember several times where things got a little bit tough, and I remember thinking, God's going to do it, though. God's going to take care of it. And so instead of like begging and pleading with God, it was more like, God, I thank you for what you're about to do. I know you're about to do it. And I don't know how you're going to do it sometimes. Maybe I shouldn't even think about how you're going to do it. Maybe I just let you handle it the way you're going to, way you want to do it. And so I kind of transitioned from, having this attitude of like, please help me, to thank you so much for what you're about to do with me, or what you're already doing in my life. Even the hard stuff, by the way, so.
We just had an interview with a precious lady named Carol who had cancer, and she had the same mentality you do. Like when she was diagnosed with cancer, she wasn't like, Lord, please help me. She was like, thank you, Lord, for healing me. And she was actually, her prayer was like, do it for the people around me.
Yeah.
And if people could catch this, the gratefulness, thankfulness to God, instead of like, he's our Father, he loves us, he cares about us, and the attitude of faith. I love that, man.
Yeah. Yeah, just knowing that he's going to be there. He's already there, and he's already listening. He knows what's going on before we even start talking to him about it. But, like I don't know about you, or I don't know how everybody else does it, but really, like most of my prayers, when I close my eyes at night and I start to pray, really, 90% of it is really just, thank you so much for my beautiful wife, and thank you so much for this life that I have and my friends, and my son is amazing. And I'll go into some details sometimes with God, like just conversational about why I'm so thankful for these kind of things, and even to be thankful for the tough things too, because we all know that like whenever we face challenges and we gotta sort of fight that challenge, it sets us up to be more prepared for the next challenge. And so so we can go back and we're like, I did it that time. I did it last time. I can do it again. And, now I've got some knowledge and some experience, and now I can get through it again, now. So it helps me even have more faith to know that, like, well, God already taught me the lesson once. Now, sometimes we don't always get it. Sometimes we got to be taught the lesson 5 times before. I'm like that a lot. I don't know why I didn't get it last time, God, but I guess you have to show me again. But no, just to have the faith and to be thankful for what He's doing for us. I think it's a big deal.
I know that God responds better to thankfulness than He does whining.
Yeah.
Like, if my kids come to me whining, they're going to get way less from me than if they come with a grateful heart.
Sometimes I wonder, does he ever go like, oh gosh, here we are again. Like, you ask for the same thing all the time. I tell people all the time, I know that, like, how you hear the thing about, like, I didn't have money for my mortgage and I went to the mailbox and there was a check in there and I didn't expect it. And I know He can do those things, and He's done them for all of us. But, like, I think more than not, I think He likes to give us the tools that it takes to go get that check. You know what I mean? Like, I like to say, I was telling my son one time, I was like, I think more often than giving me the check, God gives me the hammer to swing or the tools.
That's biblical.
Yeah.
The Bible says that He gives you the power to gain wealth.
Yeah.
He doesn't give you wealth. He gives you the power to gain wealth.
Sometimes I kind of think of Him going, well, let me show you this direction right here, and then let me just sit back and see how I take it. I want to see how you handle it, what you can do with it. I've given you the opportunity, so let's see what you do with it.
So there's dudes out there and people or men that work crazy.
Yeah.
I was one of those guys when I met you.
Yeah, me too.
I would work 14 to 16 hours a week. I mean,
a
day.
Well, he was working real hard.
I was working so hard.
He was working 2 hours a day. It was killing me.
When I was a police officer and I was trying to launch my flipping thing, I was working all the time. And then I was doing weekends, and then after church, I was going to work again. I think you asked me to, like, get coffee or something like that, and you're like, nobody's talked to me this way, by the way. Nobody has talked to me like this before. So we're just talking, and it's a good conversation. You go, why do you work so much? And I said, I do it for my wife and my kids. I'm doing it for my family. And you said, no, you don't. And I was like, yes, and I argued with you for a little bit. I was like, yes, I do. And you're like, no, you don't. You're doing it for yourself. What your family needs is you right now. Stop working so much. And you were like, you just told me. You were like, work 8 hours a day, work 40 hours a week. That's it. Stop doing all the other stuff and go spend time with your family. Yeah. My wife thanks you very much. But it hit so hard. Like, that hit me so hard, and I took it for what it was.
Yeah.
Can you explain that to people?
Well, that same thing had hit me very hard, but it came from my 5-year-old son. And so I was doing the same thing. And like, almost literally the same things you're talking about. I was being a plumber, and I was trying to start flipping houses and do real estate, and I was also doing a lot for my church. I mean, this is almost the same story. And I remember I was coming in late at night all the time, and so bedtime was like my job, so, like, it was like my wife's going to do all the things during the day, and at night, Mike, you're going to do the bedtime thing. And so, like, I was putting my son to bed one night, and I remember he just said, Dad, I miss you. And I was like, doggone, like, I wasn't out of town. I wasn't traveling. Like, it is just because I got up real early in the morning before he got up, and then I didn't get home until it was basically time to go to bed. And so I think the work-life balance thing is just something, and it's difficult. I'm not saying it's an easy thing. Like, I understand that some people got to work 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet, and I'm not saying you got to just let all that go. But I do just think that, you ever heard that people say your greatest accomplishment may not be what you do, but who you raise.
Oh, wow.
And so, and I really like that, because I was thinking, yeah, man, like the next generation, that's what we're going to leave, And so, like, what are we putting forward? That's like our legacy, and and who we raised. And so, and I remember a couple kids that whenever I was a teenager, like, their dad was a truck driver, so it was like their dad made good money, and they had a good Christmas, but their dad was never around. And then I remember a couple of those kids even telling me that later on in life, like when they were in their 20s and 30s, that their dad was sort of like trying to step back in this father role as if they were still a kid. it's almost like they're trying to catch up.
Yeah.
Because like I missed the first 18 years of your life. Now that you're 25, I want to try to tell you what to do with your kids, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, my dad wasn't even around. And so, man, I was like, I don't want to be that kind of dad where it's like everything came down to like how much money can I possibly make. Not that it's not important again, but like so that day it really got me thinking, and I was like, okay, I'm going to start putting some things in order so that I don't have to work like that. I mean, I don't have to put in that many hours. So right then and there, I was like, first step for me was like, I'm not going to work on the weekends. I'm going to tell everybody that I can do anything you want me to do Monday through Friday. It's always open. Like I'm open all the time, Monday through Friday. Saturday and Sunday, I'm going to hang out with my family. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to eat dinner. I'm going to do those things that I have to do with my family. And that was sort of the first step. And then I was a little bit later, I was able to kind of wean off to like, I'm going to try to, cut things off at 5 o'clock or whatever. So, and I also wanted to make more experiences with my family. So like, me and my family will talk a lot about, I feel like a lot of things we buy wind up broken or in a junk drawer. And instead of those things, I would rather take a vacation than spend the money on something that was going to be broken. And so we travel, and we travel in a camper, 240 square feet, 30 or 40 days in a camper. You're real close. Like you're smelling each other kind of close. You know what I mean? And now instead of spending money on whatever the next gadget or gizmo is that you want to get, we try to spend money and time together. And it's awesome because we talk years later. We'll say, man, remember that time we were out there and this happened? And, we got story after story after story. And it's all these stories of being together. And we were scared or we were nervous or we was laughing or we was sad or whatever it is, but we were doing it together and we were having a really good time and we were seeing things that we've never seen. And so those experiences. So, I think it's important to try to have the balance and make sure you're spending time with your family. I don't want them to be like, I don't want my wife to be resentful because she's the one at home all the time with the kid and I'm never there. Like I'm just, I get to be gone all day. And so we got to spend time with our family and our kids, and we have a lot to put in them. When it comes down to it, man, we only have 18 years. And I mean, I know you still got a lot of young ones. You're going to look back one day and you're going like, dude, like 18 years, zoom right past me. I swear you used to talk baby talk and couldn't pronounce your R's, and now you got facial hair and you got a deep voice. Like, what the heck happened? Yeah. I remember being at the kitchen counter with my son Caden one morning, and I remember looking over at him like, why are you talking to me in this deep voice right now? Like, are you angry? No, puberty just happened, and I just started, So like, I don't want to miss all that. I feel like the age of 1 is very important. I feel like the age of 5 is very important, and every single year is a very important developmental year. And I don't know if you've heard. I'm sorry, I'm using a lot of like, things we hear all the time. Do you ever hear about like the ship that needs correction? If you don't correct it little by little, it's going to be 100 miles off course by the time it gets down there.
Oh, yeah.
But if you make small corrections along the way, it's easy. It's real easy whenever you've set up a lifestyle or like a culture in your house that this is the way we do things. And then whenever slight things happen, it's easy to push it back, in the right path before they get 15 and they're yelling and screaming and, acting wild.
It's like that song, "The Cat's in the Cradle and the Silver Spoon."
Little boy blue in the
moon. In the moon. But no condemnation to those dads that got it wrong now that your kids are grown up. But those dads that can do something now, I think like it's not even just about work. But some dudes come home, some men come home, and they just plop down, drink a beer, or they sit down and watch TV, and they don't spend any time with their kids.
Yeah.
And I think me and you have that same heart, is like to invest. And like, if I'm going to have a project at home, I'll let my kids help me.
Yeah.
It takes about 15 times longer.
Yeah.
I mean, they want to hold the drill and they're like 5 and it goes crooked.
Yeah. They put 4 holes in the wall that you got to fix.
Yeah, but why not let them do it?
Yeah.
Like is it really that important for me to get it done today?
Yeah.
I'd rather have the investing that time. And then you're the proof where we look at your kid that's 19.
Yeah.
And he loves Jesus.
Yeah.
He's on fire for God.
Yeah.
He's got great friends that are around him, and he is the influence on everybody around him. So, and then my daughter is another proof of that. She's 14, and like they talk about the terrible teens. I don't have that.
Right.
I've got an amazing daughter.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I got it all perfect and I'm all right, but like since you slapped me with the words that you did that day, I chose to spend time with my family.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I really do.
And sometimes with some of those projects and stuff that we do, sometimes my wife will be like, well, show him how to do this. And I'm like, no. Why don't we just put the drill in his hand and let him just go? Because for me, and it's probably the same for you, I mean, like swinging that hammer is how I learned. Like telling me how to swing the hammer, well, I don't know what it feels like, but like let him go ahead and mess it up some, and and see what works and what doesn't work, and just let him spend a few minutes messing it up.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think that's like the best teacher, is messing it up some.
You have a really big win story, and you said nothing was off limits, so I'm gonna ask you about this big win. What year did you buy the trailer park on Trinity Lane?
Early, like 05, maybe 06. So like I bought the houses that I bought, and then I got those 3 mobile homes. It wasn't long after that there was a little 7-unit mobile home park that came up for sale off of Trinity Lane on Brick Church Pike, Baptist World Center Drive. It's like if there's people watching that know that area, and it was not a good area. Dude, I'm telling you.
I used to go help you cut grass out there, and I think I did a few projects for you too.
Yeah, you did. I mean, it was a rough place to be. I could share stories about that place there. Probably too much for what we're talking about. But like, I bought this place. Well, first off, I wanted to buy it, and I didn't have any money to buy it. The guy that I went back to the same guy that had those mobile homes. I said, man, I wish I could buy that park down there, but it's $135,000. And I don't have it. I don't know how to buy it. I don't know how to get any money from the bank or anything. He said, well, maybe I'll buy it and sell it to you. That's exactly what he did. I think he paid $118 for it. He sold it to me for $150. And so, but he sold it to me on an owner-held note, so I didn't have to have the bank. He did that. He did the bank thing.
Wow.
And then so he made a little bit of money on top of it. And I bought it that way with him. It was a 7-unit mobile home park. Everybody in the world said, I can't believe you're doing that. You're crazy. You overpaid anyways. It was for sale for $135 already, like just on the market, and you paid $150, and it's like in the worst part of town. Like I can't think of any reasons that you'd ever want to put yourself in the position, but I bought it in 05, and then I made money with it for a long, long time, and then we sold it in 2021. I think we sold it for $1.1 million.
Come on.
And it was paid for. So, I ended up getting it refinanced with a bank a couple years later, and then I don't know, I think it was on a 10 or 15-year mortgage or something like that. I had paid it off a few years before I had sold it. And then I had a guy call me, and he's like, hey,
But you didn't pay it off. Your tenants paid it off.
My tenants paid it off. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, tenants paid it off. And it makes more money every year, so you're raising your rents every year, and you're paying down your balance every month. And so, those are some more of those parts of real estate that I wasn't even thinking about at first. I was thinking about the $500 to $900 gap that I was going to get. And I wasn't even thinking about how some of this property just changes, over time. And Nashville changed so much. So it went from being like one of the worst parts of town to, I remember saying, I could probably walk to Top Golf in about 20 minutes. And so somebody was like, it's that close to Top Golf? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, that property is worth crazy money. Like I wasn't really thinking about it in those terms. I was like, it's probably always just going to be a 7-unit trailer park that I deal with the same kind of people, and rents will increase over time. But I never expected it to be a windfall like that. I mean, whenever I bought it, it was. I had a guy that owned some mobile home parks up the road, and I don't know. I think he saw me as like young and, what's he doing in my part of town? And so he drove up to the mobile home park. I was by myself in one of the trailers, and I was knee-kicking carpet. And I remember somebody banging on the door. Now, I figured this was like maybe one of the tenants from next door or something like that. I mean, it could have been a prostitute or something for all I know. I don't know. But somebody banged the door. Well, it was the owner of these other mobile home parks. And he came in like boss hog. Like he had this big jacked up old like 1960s Ford truck, and he drove it all the way up, like there was railroad ties that were like marking out the parking spots. He drove over those and put his bumper all the way to the porch and got out and like climbed up off the truck and come in and was like, you overpaid for this. I don't know what you're doing. And he just gave me a hard time for like 20 minutes. It didn't help me any because like I'd already been told 9 times that I bought the stupidest thing and I shouldn't have it. And then this guy that's he's a successful investor, and he's telling me how bad I did. Man. Fast forward about 10 or 15 years, and it's like, well, I guess I did it all right. And that propelled me to buy more. So now we have 8 mobile home parks now. That was the first one. So that one really kind of pushed me into, I think I like this dirty.
That's incredible. How many doors do you have?
We have about 120 or so right now.
Praise the Lord,
and I was just talking to a guy this morning about another one in East Tennessee, a 30 unit in East Tennessee. I don't think we're going to buy it. I don't think it's the right deal, but we're kind of starting to look, for some more deals now. And with interest rates being what they were the past couple of years, I kind of was like hunkering down a little bit, and I was improving the mobile home parks that we have and the investments that we have, and I got a couple of other things going on too. And I kind of like hunkered down and was messing with those projects, and now I'm starting to look towards some new stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mike Ray, you are an inspiration, sir.
Well, thank you.
I love, you're not supposed to do this, but it'd be funny if you got to run into that guy with a 1960s jacked up Ford and be like, yeah, I did pretty terrible, didn't I?
Yeah.
I definitely overpaid.
Yeah, man, it's killing me.
But
yeah.
I believe that the reason that you have been blessed is not only that, God favors Mike Ray only,
Yeah.
but you have decided that you care about people. You're a giver. You give your time. Like, you've sat down with me and probably hundreds of other people that have not ever taken your advice, but you give that time. You give people that time, and that's important. Like, you've received the blessings from the Lord, but you're also a giver.
I spoke at a real estate meeting in Murfreesboro a couple months ago, and some of these kind of events you're probably not supposed to talk about, politics and religion, right? You're supposed to keep away from those. And somebody asked me about, why I did some of the things that I did and why I think maybe I'd gotten there. And I said, we're blessed to be a blessing. And whenever and if you're not Christian, I guess you can call it paying it forward or whatever you want to call it. But I really do think that, as we learn, and, we're in our 40s now, like we're starting to figure some things out at least. And once you start figuring some of those things out and you're starting to put some skills in place, I think we're supposed to pay it forward. Supposed to teach other people, well, here's how I did it, and here's what I think can work, and here's the ideas, that I've got. I tell some of Caden's friends now, some of them have asked, like, how do you get rich? And I'm like, you know what? I could put this real simple in one sentence. You could buy real estate and wait. I mean, you have a house. I don't know what you paid for it, but it's worth a lot more now than it was back then. And everybody else pretty much that ever bought a house for $200,000, now they're worth $500,000 a few years later. Well, that means your net worth, just the house alone, is $300,000. So it's really not that difficult. Whenever you say, like, you've become a millionaire, well, heck, you could buy a handful of homes, and you might be one too in just a couple of years. It may not be that complicated, but I do think that we owe it to the next generation or people that are, if they show interest in something and they're like, man, I'd really love to get into something like that. To me, I'm listening to that. I'm like, oh, really? Well, maybe we should do a ride along. So we do a lot of ride alongs, where somebody comes and they're just like, I just want to hang out with you for a day, and they'll come ride around and they'll see our beautiful, glorious mobile home parks and everything that goes into it and all those kind of things. And yeah, I just think we owe it to the next, anything we can share, whatever it is.
Yeah. I've never seen you with a bad attitude. I've never seen you down. I mean, those things happen.
Yeah.
But you project like this energy of like thankfulness, excitement,
Yeah.
and I think it's attractive. And it's the law of attraction, but it's also a godly attraction.
Yeah.
And just your whole demeanor of giving, and even your answer, like when this kid's like, "How do I become rich?" Most people are going to answer in a jerk way, and they're going to be like, "You work hard."
Yeah.
But you're like, even that answer is like shows the kind of guy you are.
Well, we were talking about our kids a minute ago, right? So I specifically remember like the very like stereotypical question you get from your kid, Dad, why is the sky blue? Well, we didn't give the answer of like, well, it just is. God just made it that way. No, we're going to find out why the sky is blue. And if I don't know, we're going to look it up and we're going to figure out why. And I think, to the other investors or the people that we're paying it forward to, I think that also you put that in the same place, like, how do you get rich? Well, let's really talk about it. And I don't know everything, but I can tell them what I did, and I can tell them about some ideas that I think I've got for the future and what has worked before, and maybe let's dig into it a little bit farther, and we'll do some research and find out what's working for everybody else that's ever gotten rich or whatever. And it doesn't have to be money either. It can also be success in whatever you want to do. How do you become a successful father and husband? well, here's some of the things that
Yeah.
I think are important, and here's what I learned. I mean, I got my head beat in for X amount of years trying to figure it out, and, you know, something slapped me over the head and showed me not to do that or to move in this direction. So I think just with our kids, you know, same way with their kids as everybody else, I think like actually having some communication and talking about things and not giving the jerk answer of like, well, you just got to work hard, or just not giving an answer at all, because I think some people are just like, no, it's all mine. I don't want to tell. I tell people all the time, like some people, okay, you know how like some people, you do real estate too. So sometimes you'll have somebody that tells you about a house that they've got or something for sale. But they don't want to give you too many details because, like, maybe you'll steal it or something. I don't know how many times somebody has come to me and said, hey, I'm looking at this mobile home park. Well, where is it? Well, it's in East Tennessee. Where is it? Tell me the road. I want to look it up. Well, I got to be careful. And I'm like, brother, I'm not going to take it from you. I do love the art of the deal. Like, I absolutely love breaking down this business thing and seeing where the money is going and how it's coming and where the holes in the bucket are. And let's talk about all those things and see how you can take it and fix it and make something of it, you know?
I've brought you a few deals with holes in the buckets.
Yeah. Almost all of them have a lot of holes in the bucket, which is why the previous person is ready to sell it.
We almost bought one together that the roadway was like chopping off the building.
The little motel?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know that came back up for sale recently?
Really?
I saw it, and I was like, I even saw this person that was interested in it, and they were like, foaming at the mouth to try to get information on it. And I was thinking, when you get that information, you probably won't be as excited anymore.
Mike, as we close it, I want you to think of a funny story because you've been doing a lot of real estate for years. That might put you on the spot. Maybe you don't have one. But while you're thinking about that, I just hope that everybody can see the connection between your salvation, God's blessings, and your attitude toward God and how he's propelled you into this position. And then not only has he put you there, but you didn't squander it. You are still a giver. You're still thankful. And things aren't always easy. That you just lost your dad this past year. That stuff's hard. But you stay the course with faithfulness, and you're just a good dude.
Thank you.
So I don't know if that gave you enough time to think about.
I'm going to be honest. I can't hardly think. I can think of a couple, but I don't know if you want them on this. I mean, that's just being honest. Like I got a couple of wild stories, but I think you might cut them off. You know what, Mike? Let's retake the end of that, and you close that up in a different way. I like the couple of stories that I've got. I really don't know if the viewers want to hear them. I don't know if I can say them.
Maybe we can do a part 2 soon.
Yeah.
With just crazy stories from the trailer park.
Let me know. I'm ready.
Cool, man. Thank you so much for being part of this and doing this.
Yeah.
Love you, bro.
Yeah, man. You too. A lot of fun.
Hey, thank you for joining the podcast today. Thank you, Mike Ray, for being a part of it. If you liked what you heard, like, share, and subscribe.